The Force had always been a current, an invisible ocean binding every living thing across the galaxy. It flowed through Jedi, whispered to the Sith, and pulsed in the quiet spaces between stars. It predicted, guided, resisted, it balanced, until something entered the galaxy that it could not touch. The disturbance did not feel like darkness, it did not feel like light, it did not feel like anything at all. It was absence. Above a war-torn world on the outer rim, the sky tore open, not like a hyperspace rupture, not like a weapon, but like reality itself had been punched from the inside. A silent fracture spread across the clouds, distorting the stars beyond it. No energy signature preceded it, no warning echoed through the Force. And then something fell out. A bald man in a yellow suit plummeted toward the battlefield below, arms at his sides, expression utterly blank. Below, chaos ruled. Blaster fire streaked across scorched plains. Separatist droids advanced in rigid formations, while Republic clone troopers dug into crumbling defenses. The distant hum of lightsabers cut through the noise as Jedi knights moved through the battlefield like living currents of precision and control. One of them paused. A Jedi Master turned sharply, eyes narrowing. He reached into the Force, felt for the disturbance, but there was nothing, no presence, no ripple, just a void where something should have been. "What is that?" a clone trooper shouted, pointing upward. The falling man hit the ground. No explosion, no crater, just a soft thud. Dust rose around Saitama as he stood up slowly, as brushing debris off his shoulder like he had tripped on a sidewalk instead of fallen from the sky. He looked around. "Huh," he muttered. Blaster bolts screamed toward him. Without thinking, Saitama leaned slightly to the side. The shots missed him by inches, striking the ground behind him in bursts of molten dirt. A line of B-1 battle droids marched forward, weapons raised. "Target acquired!" Saitama stared at them. "Robots!" One fired. He swatted the bolt away like it was a fly. The battlefield slowed, not in time but in perception, as nearby clones and Jedi turned their attention toward the anomaly standing calmly in the middle of a war zone. A clone captain barked into his comm, "Unidentified civilian in the open! Get him out of there!" But no one moved fast enough. The droids opened fire all at once. A storm of red energy flooded toward Saitama. He blinked, then he moved, not fast, at least not in any way the eye could track. One moment he stood still. The next, the entire front line of droids exploded into fragments of metal and sparks, their bodies shattered by impacts no one had seen. Limbs scattered, heads spun into the air. Smoke rose from dozens of destroyed units. Silence fell in a ripple. Saitama stood in the middle of it, one hand slightly raised. "I guess that worked," he said. The Jedi Master stepped forward cautiously, lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss. The glowing blade reflected in his focused eyes as he studied the man before him. "I cannot feel you," the Jedi said slowly. "Who are you?" Saitama turned. Just a guy who's a hero for fun." The answer made no sense. The Force offered no clarification. The Jedi frowned. "That's not possible." Another wave of droids approached from the ridge, heavier units this time, super battle droids with reinforced plating and missile launchers primed. Saitama glanced at them. "More?" Missiles launched. They streaked through the air, spiraling toward the center of the battlefield. Clones scattered. Jedi raised their hands instinctively, preparing to deflect or contain the explosion. Saitama sighed. "This is kind of annoying." He stepped forward, just once, and threw a punch. The air cracked, not metaphorically, physically. A shockwave erupted from his fist, distorting the atmosphere like a ripple across water. The missiles disintegrated mid-flight. The incoming droid army behind them was erased in an instant, flattened, shattered, and blasted backward in a wave of force that carved a trench across the battlefield. The wind howled, then stopped. The battlefield was empty. Clones lowered their weapons slowly. Jedi stood frozen, their connection to the Force offering no explanation for what they had just witnessed. The Jedi Master extinguished his lightsaber. "This is not the Force," he whispered. Saitama scratched his head. "Yeah, I don't really get what's going on either." High above the battlefield, far beyond sight, something shifted. On Palpatine's throne world, a shadow stirred within the currents of the Force. For the first time in decades, his carefully balanced web of light and dark wavered, not from opposition, but from something that did not belong. Something the Force itself could not see. Back on the battlefield, the Jedi Master made a decision. "You're coming with us," he said. Saitama shrugged. "Do you have food?" The war had not ended, but something far more dangerous had just begun. The Republic gunship roared through the upper atmosphere, its engines slicing through turbulent clouds as it carried survivors away from the shattered battlefield. Inside, the metallic hum of the vessel mixed with the low murmur of clone troopers reporting status updates. The smell of scorched armor and ionized air clung to everything. And sitting in the middle of it all, legs crossed, completely relaxed, was Saitama. He held a ration bar in one hand, chewing slowly, eyes drifting toward the open side hatch where distant stars peeked through the thinning clouds. "It's not bad," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Across from him, the Jedi Master who had witnessed the impossible stood silently, arms folded into his robes. His gaze never left Saitama. Around them, several clone troopers pretended not to stare, but they were watching, analyzing, trying to make sense of what they had seen. Finally, the Jedi spoke. "You destroyed an entire battalion with a single strike." Saitama swallowed. "Yeah, I guess. They didn't look that strong." The Jedi's brow tightened. "Those were reinforced units, designed to counter Jedi." "Oh." That didn't seem to change anything for him. The silence stretched. The Jedi stepped closer. "I reached into the Force when you appeared. I searched for your presence, for your intentions." He paused. There was nothing. Saitama looked up. "Is that bad?" "It is impossible." The clones shifted uneasily. One of them muttered under his breath, "Sir, no life form just doesn't exist in the Force." But the Jedi didn't respond. His attention remained fixed. "Every living being resonates through the Force. Even the smallest creature leaves an imprint. You—" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "You are like a void." Saitama scratched his cheek. "Maybe it's broken?" The Jedi didn't smile. "This Force governs balance in the galaxy. Light and dark, life and death. It connects everything." "Sounds complicated." "It is necessary." Saitama leaned back slightly, staring at the ceiling. "Where I'm from, things are simpler. If something bad shows up, you just punch it." One of the clones chuckled before quickly stopping when the Jedi glanced his way. The ship lurched slightly as it broke through the last cloud layer. Coruscant's skyline came into view, endless towers stretching into the sky, glowing with layers of civilization stacked upon itself. Saitama's eyes widened just a little. Even he couldn't ignore that. But the Jedi noticed. "That is Coruscant, the heart of the Republic. Looks expensive." The gunship descended toward a landing platform attached to the Jedi Temple, a massive structure rising like a beacon above the cityscape. Its spires cut into the sky, ancient and imposing. As the ship touched down, a group of Jedi waited. They already knew. Inside the Jedi Temple, the air felt different, calm, measured, heavy with unseen currents. For most, it was comforting. For Saitama, "Feels kind of weird in here." The Jedi Master guiding him paused. "What do you mean?" "Like, something's watching, but also not." That alone sent a ripple through the gathered Jedi, because that was the Force. And yet he described it like an outsider. At the center of the chamber stood senior members of the council. Among them, at the presence of Mace Windu, stood firm and unyielding, his piercing gaze fixed directly on Saitama. "This is the one?" Windu asked. "Yes," the Master replied. "He fell from the sky, unharmed, untraceable." A murmur passed through the chamber. Windu stepped forward slowly. "State your name." "Saitama." "You're not a Jedi." "Nope." "You're not a soldier." "Not really." "Then what are you?" Saitama thought for a moment. "A hero." The word echoed strangely in the chamber. Windu studied him, searching not just with his eyes, but through the Force itself. Nothing. That alone made his expression harden. "This is a threat," one of the council members said quietly. "Something that exists outside the Force cannot be understood, and what cannot be understood cannot be controlled." Saitama raised a hand slightly. "I am not really trying to control anything." "That is not reassuring." Another voice spoke, calm, measured. "Perhaps not a threat," said Yoda, his small form stepping forward. "But a mystery, he is. Dangerous, yes, but not dark." Saitama blinked. "Thanks, I think." Yoda tilted his head, studying him carefully. "Balance, the Force seeks, always, but you—" He narrowed his eyes. "Balance you disrupt simply by existing." The room fell quiet again, because that was the truth none of them wanted to say out loud. Saitama didn't belong, and yet he couldn't be denied. Far below Coruscant's shining surface, in the shadows of power, Palpatine sat in silence, fingers steepled. For the first time in years, the future was unclear. The Force did not whisper answers. It hesitated, and that fascinated him. "I'll find him," Palpatine said softly. Because whatever Saitama was, he was not just a disruption, he was an opportunity. Back in the council chamber, Saitama stretched slightly. "So, what happens now?" No one had an answer, and that was the most dangerous part. Coruscant never slept, but beneath its endless lights, strategies shifted the moment something impossible entered the board. Inside the Jedi Temple, tension lingered long after the council session ended. Some masters argued for containment, others urged observation. A few, very few, believed Saitama might represent something entirely new. Saitama, meanwhile, was sitting on a stone bench outside, staring at a training courtyard. Padawans sparred in controlled duels, blue and green blades clashing in arcs of light. Their movements were disciplined, precise, guided by something Saitama still didn't fully understand. "Yeah, they're serious about this," he muttered. A voice answered from behind. "You find it amusing?" Saitama turned. Standing there, arms folded, was Anakin Skywalker. His gaze was sharp, intense, far less restrained than the other Jedi. There was curiosity there, but also something else. Challenge. Saitama shrugged. "Not really, just wondering if they're having fun." Anakin frowned slightly. "This isn't about fun, it's about discipline, control, responsibility." "Sounds tiring." Anakin stepped closer. "You wiped out an entire droid battalion without effort. That's not something anyone just does." "They were kind of weak." "That's not the point." There was a flicker of frustration in Anakin's voice. "Power like that, it has consequences. You can't just treat it like a game." Saitama tilted his head. "I'm not playing a game. I just haven't found anything strong enough to make it interesting." That answer hit harder than any insult, because Anakin understood what it meant to crave something more, to feel trapped by limits no one else could see. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, an alarm echoed through the temple, sharp, urgent. A temple guard rushed into the courtyard. "Emergency transmission from the outer rim. Multiple systems under attack. Separatist forces have launched a coordinated offensive." Holographic projectors flickered to life across the courtyard. Star maps appeared, flashing red across multiple sectors. Anakin's focus snapped instantly. "Where?" "Felucia, Christophsis, and—" The guard hesitated. "Forward Republic base on Ord Mantell is about to fall." Anakin clenched his fist. "Then we don't wait." He turned to leave, but paused. His eyes shifted back to Saitama. "Or come with me." Saitama blinked. "Huh? You want to understand this war? Then see it for yourself." Saitama thought about it, then stood up. "Sure, I've got nothing else going on." Minutes later, a Republic cruiser tore through hyperspace. Inside the hangar bay, clone troopers prepared for deployment, checking weapons, loading transports, moving with practiced urgency. Anakin stood at the center of it all, issuing commands with sharp precision. "Gunships deploy on my mark. We hit the droid lines fast and break their advance before they secure the base." A clone commander nodded. "Yes, General." Saitama stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching. You guys do this a lot?" Anakin didn't look at him. "Every day." The cruiser shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Ord Mantell burned below. Explosions lit up the surface. Smoke spiraled into the sky. The Republic base was already under siege, droid forces advancing in overwhelming numbers. "Too late," a clone muttered. Anakin ignited his lightsaber. "No," he said firmly. "Not yet." He turned to Saitama. "Stay close, and don't—" Saitama was already gone. "Run off," Anakin finished, annoyed. Below, the battlefield raged. Droid tanks rolled forward, heavy artillery pounding the last defensive lines. Clone troopers fired desperately from crumbling barricades, their numbers thinning by the second. A commander shouted into his comm, "We can't hold much longer. We need reinforcements now." Then something landed in front of the advancing droid army. A single figure, yellow suit, blank expression. "Oh, more robots." The droids paused for exactly 1 second, then opened fire. A wall of blaster bolts surged forward. Saitama stood still. One bolt came close. He flicked it aside. Then he took a step forward. To the clones watching from the barricades, it looked like nothing. But to the droids, it was annihilation. Saitama moved through them like a phantom. Every step erased entire squads. Tanks collapsed under casual taps. Artillery exploded before firing. He wasn't fighting, he was cleaning up. Within seconds, the battlefield shifted. Within moments, it was over. The entire droid assault force lay in ruins. Silence spread outward like a shockwave. A clone trooper lowered his rifle slowly. "What just happened?" another whispered. "That wasn't a Jedi." Above them, Anakin landed with his forces, only to find the battle already won. His eyes scanned the destruction. To droid parts scattered across kilometers, craters carved into the ground, smoke rising from what had been an army. At the center of it all stood Saitama. "Took you long enough," he said. Anakin stared at him, not impressed, not grateful, concerned. Because this wasn't power guided by the Force. It wasn't discipline. It wasn't balance. It was something else entirely. And for the first time, Anakin wasn't sure where he stood next to it. High above, aboard the cruiser, sensors struggled to process what had happened. Data flickered, calculations failed, and far away, in the shadows of Coruscant, Palpatine smiled, because now he had proof. This was not an anomaly, this was a weapon, and if it could not be controlled, it would have to be broken. The aftermath of Ord Mantell did not settle. It echoed. Across Republic command channels, fragmented reports repeated themselves in disbelief. Entire separatist formations had vanished in under a minute. Tactical explanation. No known Jedi involvement. No Force signature that anyone could interpret. Just silence, followed by absolute collapse. Inside the forward command shuttle orbiting the planet, Anakin Skywalker stood with his arms behind his back, staring at the battlefield through the viewport. The wreckage below still smoldered, drifting smoke forming ghostly patterns across the surface. Behind him, clone officers argued in low tones. That level of destruction is impossible without orbital bombardment. There were no ships firing. Then what did it? Anakin cut in sharply. "Stop!" The room fell quiet. I didn't turn around. I saw it. That alone ended the debate, because Anakin Skywalker didn't misread battles. On the surface, Saitama was sitting on a broken crate, poking at a dented piece of droid armor with a stick he had found somewhere. He looked unchanged. No exhaustion, no pride, no confusion, just mild boredom. A clone approached cautiously. Sir? The General wants to speak with you." Saitama looked up. "Which one?" "Skywalker." "Right." He stood and followed without urgency, stepping over wreckage like it was just clutter on a street. Around him, clones gave him space. Not out of respect, but uncertainty. No one had training for this, no protocol for a man who erased an army like it was nothing, and then acted like he had finished errands. Anakin met him near the landing zone. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Anakin said, "You ended the battle before it even began." Saitama shrugged. "It was already going badly for you guys." "That's not the point." Saitama blinked. "Then what is?" Anakin stepped closer. The air between them felt tighter now, not from the Force, but from something more personal. "You don't understand what you're doing here," Anakin said. "Wars like this don't end because someone is strong. They end because of balance. Strategy, sacrifice. Saitama tilted his head. Balance? Yes. Like evenly matched? Anakin hesitated. More than that. The Force maintains equilibrium, light and dark, action and consequence. Saitama stared at him for a moment. That sounds kind of complicated. Anakin exhaled sharply. It is complicated. A pause. Then Saitama said something that made Anakin go quiet. I think I might be messing it up then. Not because he was sorry, but because he genuinely didn't understand the system he was supposedly breaking. Far above them, on a distant command platform hidden in orbit, a holographic transmission flickered to life. Palpatine watched everything unfold in silence. Clone reports, Jedi hesitation, Skywalker's reactions, and the anomaly itself, calm, uninterested, unstoppable. A being the Force did not acknowledge. That alone made him dangerous or valuable. Describe him again, Palpatine said softly. A Republic officer swallowed. He appears human. No Force signature. No known energy readings consistent with any weapon or being we've studied. He destroyed an entire separatist force without effort. Palpatine's eyes narrowed slightly. Effort, he repeated. That was the key word. Because power without effort was unpredictable, and unpredictability was either chaos or opportunity. Keep him close to Skywalker, Palpatine ordered. Observe how they interact. Yes, Chancellor. The hologram faded, but his thoughts remained. If the Force could not see this man, then perhaps it could not control him either, and that meant someone else might. Back on the surface, Jedi reinforcements finally arrived. Among them was Master Windu. He stepped onto the battlefield, scanning the destruction with a hardened expression. The scale of it was not just military, it was philosophical. Something had shifted here, and the Force was unsettled. He approached Anakin first. You let him engage alone. Anakin's jaw tightened. I didn't have time to stop him. Windu's gaze shifted toward Saitama in the distance. That is him? Yes. Windu studied the figure carefully, then closed his eyes, reaching into the Force. Nothing. Not darkness, not light, not even absence in the way Sith or forbidden beings felt. Just nothing. For the first time in a long time, Mace Windu felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Saitama waved slightly when he noticed them looking. Hey, he called casually. Windu opened his eyes. You are not part of this galaxy's balance, he said. Saitama paused. Is that bad? A long silence followed, because no one had an answer that didn't sound terrifying. At night, the Republic encampment was uneasy. Jedi meditated in fractured silence. Clones watched the horizon more than their equipment. Anakin stood alone near the edge of the base, staring at the stars. Saitama walked up beside him. You think I'm dangerous? Saitama asked. Anakin didn't answer immediately. Then, I think you don't realize what you are. Saitama looked up. I don't really think I'm anything special. That statement hit harder than arrogance would have, because it wasn't pride, it was ignorance of consequence. Anakin clenched his fist slightly. In this galaxy, that's worse. Above them, unseen by either, the Force rippled for the first time around Saitama, not like it was reacting to him, but like it was trying unsuccessfully to define him. And failing. The Republic did not celebrate victories like Ord Mantell anymore. It measured them, logged them, sanitized them, filed them into reports that rarely captured what actually happened on the ground. But this one couldn't be sanitized because every version of the report ended the same way. Unknown entity neutralized entire separatist force without sustained engagement. And every Jedi who read it asked the same question: what is he? Inside the Jedi Temple, debate had become tension. Some masters wanted Saitama detained, others argued observation. A few believed he might be a force anomaly that should be studied rather than contained. But none of them could agree on one thing: he did not behave like anything the Force had ever described. Meanwhile, Saitama was walking through Coruscant's lower traffic levels, and he had been told, "Don't wander off." He had nodded and immediately wandered off. Now he stood in a crowded walkway beneath towering neon signage, watching speeders streak overhead like glowing insects. The noise, the density, the endless movement, it was the opposite of silence, and yet strangely normal. "This place is huge," he muttered. A nearby vendor leaned out of a stall. "Hey, you lost, bold guy?" Saitama blinked. "No, just looking around." "You Republic military or something?" "Not really." The vendor shrugged. "You look like you could use food." That got his attention. Elsewhere in the galaxy, something else was moving. Deep within a concealed Imperial intelligence relay, fragmented reports from Republic channels had already been intercepted. And one name kept appearing: no Force signature. No classification, no known species categorization that made sense. Just entity demonstrated combat output exceeding planetary-grade engagements. That information was forwarded upward to one observer, Palpatine. He read it once, then again, then smiled faintly. "Exceeding planetary grade," he repeated softly. Interesting phrasing, because in the Sith mind, power was always measurable, and anything beyond measurement was either divine or dangerous. Back in the lower levels, Saitama sat on a crate outside a food stall, eating something that vaguely resembled noodles but tasted nothing like anything he recognized. "It's okay," he said. The vendor looked offended. "That's the best broth in the district." Saitama nodded politely. "Yeah, it's okay." A pause, then a shadow fell across the street. A group of armored figures stepped into view. Not clones, not Jedi, bounty hunters. One of them spoke through a modulator. "That's him." Saitama looked up slightly. "Me?" The leader tilted their head. "You're the one who flattened the separatist assault force." "I think so?" The hunters exchanged glances, then weapons were drawn. "This is a contract. You're coming with us." Saitama sighed. "I was eating." The first shot fired. The bolt should have hit him square in the chest. Instead, it stopped, not deflected, not dodged, just frozen mid-air for a fraction of a second before dropping harmlessly to the ground. Silence. The hunters paused. "What the?" Saitama stood slowly. "I don't really like being interrupted when I'm eating." He stepped forward, and the entire street changed in an instant. Not destruction, not chaos, just absence of effort. One moment, armed hunters. The next, they were gone, knocked back, disarmed, embedded into walls or unconscious on the ground, in positions that suggested no clear pattern of violence. No blood, no spectacle, just results. The vendor behind the stall stared. "See, what are you?" he whispered. Saitama thought about it, then shrugged. "A hero, I guess." That night, the Jedi Council received a new report. Mace Windu read it twice. "He was attacked by bounty hunters," a master said. "All of them were neutralized instantly. No fatalities confirmed." Windu's expression tightened. Did he escalate? No. That was the problem. He hadn't escalated. He hadn't needed to. In the same moment, far above Coruscant, a darker conversation unfolded. Palpatine stood alone in his chamber, hands clasped behind his back. Skywalker's potential was rising. The war was nearing its intended turning point. And yet, this anomaly remained, unaligned, uncontrolled, unmoved by Force presence. That last part mattered most, because everything in the galaxy bent to the Force in some way, everything except him. Palpatine turned slightly toward the holographic map of the galaxy. "If he cannot be influenced," he murmured, "then he must be understood." A pause, then softer. "And if he cannot be understood," his eyes narrowed slightly, "he must be placed where understanding is no longer necessary." Back on Coruscant's lower levels, Saitama stretched. "But still hungry," he said. Above him, the city hummed endlessly. Below him, the underworld took notice. And far away, unseen by all, the Force itself stirred again, not in warning, but in confusion. Because something in the galaxy was beginning to behave like it had no role in destiny at all. And that had never happened before. Coruscant's lower levels never truly changed, only the crimes did. New syndicates rose, old ones collapsed, power shifted like tides beneath metal oceans. But the darkness always remained constant. And now it had a new rumor circulating through it. A man who ended fights before they became fights, a man who didn't bleed, a man who didn't feel like anything at all in the Force. Deep within a dim cantina carved into the underside of a transport bridge, a hollow screen flickered with fragmented bounty reports. The image of Saitama appeared distorted, incomplete, as if even surveillance technology struggled to interpret what it was seeing. "He wiped out a full bounty crew in seconds," one voice whispered. No blaster fire returned, no signs of struggle. Not even a Force echo. That last part made the room go quiet. Because in the underworld, even Jedi left ripples. Saitama left nothing. At the bar counter, Saitama sat casually, sipping something carbonated that tasted vaguely like disappointment. "This city has a lot of stairs," he muttered. The bartender froze slightly. "You're still here?" Saitama nodded. "Yeah, I'm waiting for directions back." A long pause, then the door to the cantina slid open. Cold air spilled inside. A presence entered the room that everyone noticed at once, not because of appearance, because of pressure. A Mandalorian bounty hunter stepped in, armored, silent, measured. Behind them, two others followed. This was not a casual visit, this was a test. The lead hunter spoke without raising their voice. "You're causing attention." Saitama looked over. "Me?" "Yeah." A pause. You don't belong here." Saitama blinked. "I kind of figured that already." The Mandalorian tilted their helmets slightly. "Then leave." Saitama thought about it. "I don't know where leave is." That answer made the room tense, because it wasn't defiance, it was honesty. And honesty didn't fit in the underworld. The Mandalorian raised a gauntleted hand. A stun net fired instantly. It expanded mid-air, designed to immobilize Jedi, droids, even Force-enhanced beings. It hit Saitama and stopped. Not torn, not deflected, just suspended. As if physics had momentarily lost interest, the net slid off him and collapsed harmlessly to the floor. Silence spread. One of the hunters stepped back. "That's not possible." Saitama scratched his cheek. "Is that supposed to do something?" The Mandalorian didn't respond immediately, because now it was no longer a job. It was curiosity. And Mandalorians did not ignore curiosity. Without warning, the hunter engaged. A vibroblade ignited with a harsh mechanical snap. The strike came fast, precise, trained, lethal. Saitama leaned slightly to the side. The blade passed him, no counterattack, no effort, just absence of contact. The hunter rotated, striking again, faster this time. Miss. Again. Miss. Again. The entire cantina had gone silent now, watching the impossible unfold in real time. Finally, Saitama raised a hand, lightly tapped the Mandalorian's shoulder. The armored warrior flew backward across the room, crashing into the wall hard enough to crack durasteel plating. No blood, no damage beyond impact. Just removal from the situation. The remaining hunters froze, then slowly lowered their weapons. "Contract's off," one muttered. They left without another word. The cantina returned to noise, but not normal noise, unsettled noise. Fear disguised as conversation. Saitama sighed. "I didn't even finish my drink." Far above, in orbit, intelligence reports updated in real time. Mandalorian engagement failed. Outcome classification, non-explanatory entity. Risk assessment, unknown/uncontained. And once again, the file was forwarded upward to the same observer, Palpatine. He studied it longer this time, not because it was confusing, but because it was consistent. Every encounter, every system, every faction. The result never changed. The anomaly did not escalate, did not adapt in any visible way. It simply ended things effortlessly. That was not chaos, that was inevitability. And inevitability could be shaped. Back on Coruscant, Jedi surveillance teams arrived too late to observe the cantina incident directly. Only aftermath reports remained. Mace Windu reviewed them in silence. "This is becoming unstable," a council member said. "If he continues interacting with underworld factions—" "He's not aligning with any faction," Windu interrupted. That was the problem. No ideology, no force resonance, no predictable alignment, just action, pure and unfiltered. Meanwhile, Saitama walked through the lower levels again, hands in pockets. A small crowd had begun to form at a distance, not hostile, not welcoming, just watching. Whispers followed him now, not of fear alone, but of myth forming in real time. "Did you see what he did? They say he can't be hurt. He's not even in the Force." Saitama stopped briefly. "Well, I'm getting kind of popular," he muttered. "And for the first time in this galaxy, that might have been the most dangerous development yet. Because myths in the Star Wars galaxy did not stay harmless for long. They became religion, or weapons, or prophecy, and somewhere deep in the currents of the Force, something began to shift again, not toward him, but around him, like reality itself was trying to decide what he was allowed to become. The Force had always been described as balance, light and dark, action and consequence. Life and death intertwined in an endless, unseen equation that governed the galaxy, whether anyone accepted it or not. But for the first time in recorded Jedi history, the equation had a variable that did not belong. In the Jedi Temple, the council chamber was no longer calm. Holographic projections of recent incidents surrounded the room, Ord Mantell, Coruscant underworld clashes, Mandalorian engagement logs, all converging into a single unsettling pattern. Every encounter with Saitama ended the same way: immediate resolution, no escalation, no resistance that held, no force-readable outcome. Master Windu stood at the center of it all. "This is not combat efficiency," he said firmly. "It is absence of struggle." A council member responded, "Then what is it?" Windu didn't answer immediately, because the truth was becoming harder to articulate. "It is certainty without the Force." Silence followed, because that idea should not have been possible. Elsewhere in the temple, Anakin Skywalker stood alone in a training hall. His lightsaber was active, humming steadily, as he struck a series of practiced droids with controlled precision. Each movement was fast, emotional, slightly unbalanced, like restraint was something he was still learning to wear properly. He stopped suddenly. Not because he was tired, because he was thinking about Saitama, the man who didn't feel like anything in the Force. The man who ended battles without effort. The man who didn't seem to understand why power mattered.
"Yes, what are you?" Anakin muttered. A voice behind him answered, "A disruption!" Anakin turned sharply. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood at the entrance, arms folded. "You've been distracted since Ord Mantell," Obi-Wan said calmly. Anakin frowned. "I'm not distracted." Obi-Wan raised an eyebrow. A pause. "I'm analyzing," Anakin corrected. "That's what you said last time you were distracted." Anakin deactivated his saber. "He doesn't belong here," he said. Obi-Wan stepped forward. "Neither do many things we've encountered in this war. That doesn't make them inherently dangerous." Anakin shook his head. "He ends conflict too easily." "That sounds like a good thing." "It's not," Anakin snapped, then quieter. "Because there's no cost." Obi-Wan studied him.
That sounds less like concern for the galaxy and more like concern for control." That landed. Anakin didn't respond. Far beyond Coruscant, deep within Republic intelligence channels, encrypted files were being reorganized at an alarming pace. Every major faction now had interest: Jedi Order, Observation Republic Military, Classification, Unknown Anomaly, Underworld, Syndicates, Failed Acquisition Attempts, Mandalorian Clans, Unresolved Engagement Logs, Sith Intelligence, Silent Tracking, and in the center of it all, no classification category fit Saitama. Not Force-sensitive, not non-Force-sensitive, not weapon, not asset, not threat, yet just anomaly. In the shadows of this uncertainty, something else was forming. Palpatine stood before a galaxy map, his expression calm, but his attention absolute. And every piece on the board had rules: Jedi, Sith, Republic, Separatists. Even chaos followed patterns. But Saitama did not. That made him dangerous, not because he acted, but because he did not react. Palpatine spoke softly to himself. "The Force flows through all things." A pause. "Except him." He turned slightly. "Then perhaps he is not part of the flow at all." A slow smile formed. "And anything outside the flow can be directed." On the outer rim world of Seleucami, the next crisis had already begun. A separatist stronghold was preparing a planetary strike, one designed to wipe out Republic presence entirely. Massive ion cannons charged in orbit, ground forces fortified below. Jedi forces were deployed too late to prevent escalation. Anakin led the response team, and against his judgment, Saitama was with them, Should the dropships entered atmosphere under heavy fire. Explosions lit the sky. Clone pilots shouted coordinates over comms. Anakin stood in the open ramp, watching the battlefield form beneath them. "This is different," he muttered. Saitama stood beside him. "Feels like the last place." Anakin looked at him. "Last place?" "Yeah, like everything is already decided." Anakin frowned. "Nothing is ever decided before it happens." Saitama shrugged. "That's not how it feels for me." The ship shook violently. Incoming fire struck the hull. Emergency alarms blared. "Brace for impact!" The dropship went down hard. They hit the surface in a violent crash. Dust erupted outward. The ramp dropped seconds later. And what stood outside was not a battlefield. It was a siege system designed to erase cities. Anakin ignited his saber instantly. "Stay close," he ordered. Saitama stepped forward anyway. "I'll check it out." Anakin reached out. "Wait!" But Saitama was already gone. The battlefield changed in real time. Ion turrets collapsed. Droid formations vanished. Fortifications disappeared one after another without visible struggle. It wasn't chaos, it was correction. Anakin watched from a distance, slowly lowering his blade. Because for the first time in his life, he could not find an enemy to fight. Only the aftermath of something that didn't understand war the way anyone else did. And that terrified him more than the war itself. Above the planet, orbiting fleets registered unknown anomaly termination of an entire defense network. And, somewhere deep in the Force, a question formed without words.
Oh, not from the Jedi, not from the Sith, but from the galaxy itself. What happens when conflict no longer has resistance?
The battlefield of Saleukami had gone quiet in a way that felt unnatural, not peaceful, not resolved, just emptied. Smoke drifted over shattered ion cannons. Droid husks lay twisted across scorched terrain. The planetary defense grid that should have required hours of coordinated Jedi and clone assault had collapsed in minutes. And at the center of it all stood Saitama, staring at a control tower that no longer had any functioning systems. "So that's it?" he muttered. Behind him, Anakin Skywalker landed hard, boots scraping the ground. His breathing was heavier than usual, not from exhaustion, but from something closer to disbelief. "You didn't wait," Anakin said. Saitama scratched his cheek. "It looked like it was going to explode things. I just stopped it." Anakin looked around slowly. Stopped it. That word didn't feel big enough. Entire orbital strike capability, neutralized, without coordination, without resistance, without even acknowledging the scale of what he had undone. "This isn't how war works," Anakin said quietly. Saitama tilted his head. "It kind of felt like it did." That answer hit harder than any tactical failure report. Because Saitama wasn't describing victory, he was describing absence of effort. Above them, Republic gunships circled the battlefield cautiously, scanning for remaining threats that no longer existed. Clone commanders exchanged confused reports over comm channels. No survivors. All systems offline. No Jedi intervention needed. A pause. No. Inside the wreckage of command coordination, something else was happening. Far across the galaxy, Sith intelligence channels lit up with fragmented urgency. And for the first time since the war began, Palpatine did not immediately respond. He simply watched. Because Saleukami confirmed what Ord Mantell suggested and what Coruscant feared. The anomaly was not escalating in power, it was escalating in certainty. Every conflict it touched ended the same way, not with strategy, not with dominance, but with inevitability. That made it uncontrollable, or worse, it made it usable in ways that had nothing to do with control at all. Back on the surface, Anakin approached Saitama more slowly now. "This keeps happening," Anakin said. "Every time you act, the outcome becomes absolute." Saitama looked genuinely puzzled. "Isn't that good?" "No," Anakin snapped, then stopped himself. His voice lowered. "No, because the galaxy doesn't work like that." Saitama blinked. "Why not?" Anakin hesitated, because the real answer wasn't tactical, it was philosophical and dangerous. "Because without resistance," Anakin said carefully, "there's no meaning in victory." Saitama frowned slightly. "So you need things to be harder to matter?" "That's not what I—" But Anakin stopped, because he realized how close that sounded to truth. Saitama looked out over the destroyed battlefield. "Where I'm from," he said quietly, "things were always hard. At first. Then they weren't anymore." A pause. "I thought that was normal." Anakin studied him. For the first time, he didn't see arrogance. He saw absence of struggle. And that frightened him in a way even Sith Lords usually didn't. Suddenly alarms echoed from the Republic command channel. "Oh, incoming hyperspace signatures, unknown fleet, multiple vectors." Gunships repositioned overhead. Clone units scrambled to defensive formations. Anakin turned sharply. Separatists regrouping? But the readings were wrong. Too clean, too organized, too precise. This wasn't separatist doctrine, it was something else. A shadow fleet exited hyperspace above the planet, blackened ships with unfamiliar insignias, not Republic, not Sith, not corporate, unknown. A transmission opened on all channels. A calm voice spoke. "This asset is hereby requested for retrieval." Anakin narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" No answer, only a second transmission, narrowed, direct, focused on Saitama. "He does not belong in this timeline." Saitama pointed at himself. "Me again." The fleet above began deploying descent craft. Not invasion.
Extraction! Anakin ignited his saber instantly. "You're not taking him!" Saitama sighed. "Was just getting used to this place." The first wave hit the ground, not droids, not clones, something faster, cleaner, designed for retrieval, not destruction. They moved towards Saitama with coordinated precision, attempting containment fields. Anakin engaged immediately. Clashing blades, controlled force pushes, strategic strikes, but every time he turned to coordinate with Saitama, the battlefield had already changed. Not violently, not chaotically, just resolved. One containment squad collapsed. Then another, no effort, no visible strain, just results appearing where conflict used to be. Anakin slowed, watching, realizing something terrifying. Saitama wasn't fighting like a soldier.
He wasn't even fighting like a Jedi or Sith. He was operating outside the concept of resistance entirely. Above them, the unknown fleet began recalculating. Data streamed across command channels. Target unstable intervention. Ineffective entity resists structural reality response. Then, a final directive. Containment failed. Initiate terminal protocol. Anakin looked up. "They're escalating." Saitama shrugged slightly. "Still don't really understand why they care so much." Anakin turned to him. "Because you don't belong to anything they understand?" A pause. Then softer. "And neither does the Force know what you are." Saitama blinked. Is that important? Anakin didn't answer immediately, because in that moment, he wasn't sure if it was important, or if it was the beginning of something the galaxy would never be able to categorize again. Above Seleukami, the fleet shifted formation, and for the first time, Saitama looked up properly. "Oh," he said, not fear, not excitement, just mild acknowledgement. "Looks like more work." And somewhere in the unseen layers of the Force, reality itself began to strain around the idea that something could exist in the galaxy that did not obey its rules, not yet broken, not yet understood, but no longer ignored. The sky over Saleukami no longer felt like a sky, it felt like a threshold. Above the planet, the unknown fleet had fully committed. Ships no longer held defensive formation, they descended in precise geometric alignment, as if the atmosphere itself were part of a calculation they had already solved. Every Republic channel was now locked onto the same unsettling reality. This was not separatist, not Republic, not Sith. It was something that treated conflict like an equation needing correction. On the ground, Anakin Skywalker stood still for once. That alone was rare. His saber was ignited, but he wasn't moving forward. He was watching the descent patterns, the symmetry, the discipline of a force that did not behave like any military doctrine he had ever studied. "They're not here for conquest," he said quietly. Saitama tilted his head. "Then what are they here for?" Anakin didn't answer immediately, because the truth felt too large to say out loud. "Containment," he finally said. The word hung in the air. Saitama blinked. "Still don't get why that's a thing." Anakin turned toward him sharply. "Because you are destabilizing everything around you," he said. "The Republic, the Separatists, even the Jedi Council, they all react differently to you. Nothing behaves normally anymore." Saitama scratched his head. "I'm just stopping fights." "That's exactly the problem." A pause. Anakin lowered his voice slightly. "In this galaxy, everything has a cost. Every victory, every decision. The Force maintains that balance." Saitama looked at him.
Then maybe the Force is just making things complicated." That was the moment Anakin realized something unsettling. Saitama wasn't rejecting the Force, he simply didn't recognize it as authority. Above them, the first containment ships broke atmosphere. They didn't fire, they didn't threaten, they simply projected fields, structured lattices of energy designed to isolate anomalies from space-time behavior. The air around Saitama began to distort, not violently, but wrongly. Anakin felt it instantly through the Force, a tightening, a reaction. Something was trying to define Saitama and failing. For the first time, even the Force seemed uncertain in its response. The containment field descended. Saitama looked up. "That looks annoying." He stepped forward.
And for the first time since his arrival in this galaxy, something resisted him. Not physically, not in strength, but in structure. The field did not break. It adapted, it reformed around him instantly, adjusting like a living equation trying to solve an impossible input. Anakin's eyes widened. "That's not technology," he muttered. The field tightened. Saitama paused. "Oh, that's kind of different." He threw a punch, no hesitation, no charge-up, just instinct. The air cracked, but the field didn't shatter, it bent. It absorbed, it recalculated, and for the first time it held. The battlefield fell silent. Even Saitama paused. "Hmm?" he said. Above them, command ships registered immediate anomaly success.
A subject containment. Initiated stability. Increase. 37% reality. Anchoring active. Anakin tightened his grip on his saber. "This is it," he said. "They finally found something that can hold you." Saitama looked down at his fist. "I guess I need to try a little more then." That sentence changed everything, because up until now, he had never needed to try. Saitama exhaled, not dramatically, not emotionally, just a breath. Then he stepped forward again. This time the ground beneath him cracked, not from force, but from presence. The containment field reacted instantly, reinforcing itself, and Saitama punched again, still no anger, still no struggle. But now there was intent. The air detonated outward. The containment lattice shuddered. For a split second, it held. Then it broke. Not violently.
Not explosively. Just as if the concept holding it together had been removed. The field collapsed into nothing. Above, the fleet immediately recalculated. Error. Subject adaptation exceeds model reality. Response failure. Escalate protocol. Active. Anakin stared. "You broke it!" Saitama blinked. It didn't feel that strong. That was the worst part. Because it was strong. Stronger than Republic tech. Stronger than Sith artifacts. Stronger than anything the Jedi Order had recorded. And it still wasn't enough. Far above, inside a sealed observation vessel, hidden behind layers of cloaking systems, Palpatine watched everything unfold. For the first time, his expression was no longer calm. It was focused. Because now the anomaly had done something unexpected. It resisted containment itself. Not by force, or not by corruption, but by existence alone. Palpatine stepped closer to the hologram. "So," he whispered, "you are not merely outside the Force." A pause. "You reject even systems designed to define reality." That made him more valuable and more dangerous, because now the galaxy had a problem it could not imprison, only redirect. Back on Salukami, the containment fleet began transitioning from capture protocols to termination architecture. Weapons systems powered up, orbital cannons aligned. Anakin noticed immediately. "They're going to wipe the surface." Saitama looked up. "Even me?" Anakin didn't answer, because the truth was now obvious. Yes, even him. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, Saitama didn't look bored. He looked slightly more awake.
That's kind of annoying," he said again. And this time, he stepped forward anyway. Because something in this galaxy had finally done what nothing else had managed to do. It made him try just a little bit more. And that was enough to change everything.
The orbital fleet above Salukami no longer hesitated. Containment had failed. Adjustment had failed. Reality anchoring had failed. So the only remaining option, according to every algorithm the unknown force relied upon, was termination. High above the planet, massive cannons aligned with surgical precision. Energy reservoirs surged as entire ships rerouted power into a single objective: erase the anomaly, erase the instability, restore the equation of balance they believed the galaxy depended on. Below, the battlefield felt still. Not peaceful, just waiting. Saitama stood in the center of a cracked field of durasteel and ash, looking up at the sky like he was judging the weather. "They're really going all in now," he muttered. Beside him, Anakin Skywalker tightened his grip on his lightsaber. "Oh, this isn't a battle anymore," Anakin said. "It's a purge." Saitama blinked. "Feels a bit extreme for me." Anakin looked at him sharply. "Everything about you is extreme." A pause, then quieter. "And they still don't understand you." Above them, the first orbital strike fired. The sky split open, not metaphorically. A beam of concentrated energy tore through atmosphere like reality itself was being cut. Clouds vaporized, air screamed. The ground beneath them began to glow from the sheer pressure of incoming annihilation. Republic command channels went silent. There was nothing left to coordinate, only observation, only consequence. Anakin stepped forward instinctively. "We need to move." Saitama raised a hand slightly. "Wait." That single word stopped him, not because it carried force weight, and not because it was commanding, but because Saitama said it like it didn't matter either way. And somehow that was more unsettling than urgency. The beam struck. The surface erupted in light. A column of destruction descended with planetary intent, designed to erase everything in its path down to geological memory. And in the center of it, Saitama stood still. No shield, no technique, no force barrier, just presence. The energy hit him. The ground collapsed around him. The atmosphere distorted violently. But then something impossible happened. The beam stopped spreading, not because it was blocked, but because it had nowhere to go. The destruction simply ended at him, as if the concept of impact refused to continue. Silence fell again. Even the fleet above hesitated. Anakin stared.
"Hey, that should not be possible." Saitama looked down at his hand, a faint scorch mark. That actually felt warm. That was it. That was the limit of the galaxy's most absolute strike. Warmth. Far above, in the hidden command vessel, calculations collapsed into contradiction. Subject status, undefined termination. Failure, absolute reality model incompatible. And for the first time, the system did something it was not designed to do. It paused. On Coruscant, deep within the Jedi temple, the council chamber remained silent. No one spoke, because the Force itself felt uneven, like something fundamental had been removed from the pattern. Master Windu finally broke the silence. "He is not resisting the Force," he said slowly. "He is not part of its language at all." That statement changed everything. Because if true, then prophecy no longer applied, balance no longer applied, destiny no longer applied, only observation remained. Back on Selokami, Anakin lowered his saber slightly. "You could have died," he said. Saitama shrugged. "Didn't feel like it." "That's not how this works." Saitama looked at him. But it did. A long silence followed. The battlefield behind them was gone. The war, in that moment, felt distant, irrelevant, compared to what had just happened above their heads. Then unexpectedly, the sky went quiet. The fleet did not fire again, not because it could not, but because it had stopped receiving clear directives. Deep within the unknown command structure, something new had been introduced into the system. Uncertainty, not defeat, not damage.
Just an inability to categorize what stood in front of it, and systems that cannot categorize cannot decide. Anakin sensed it immediately. "They're retreating." Saitama tilted his head. "Just like that?" Anakin nodded slowly. "They don't understand what you are." Saitama scratched his head. "I don't really either." That line hung in the air longer than anything else, because it revealed the truth no one had wanted to face. He wasn't a weapon. He wasn't a force of nature. He wasn't even an anomaly in the way they understood anomalies. He was simply something the galaxy had no framework for. Above them, the fleet began to withdraw, not destroyed, not victorious, just unable to proceed. And somewhere far beyond observation range, a presence watched everything unfold. Palpatine stood in silence for a long time, then finally smiled. "Even the Force cannot define him," he whispered. A pause. "That means he can be anything." Back on Saleokami, the wind returned. The battlefield remained broken. The war was still ongoing across the galaxy, but here, something had ended. Anakin looked at Saitama. "Well, what are you going to do now?" Saitama thought for a moment, then shrugged. "I guess look around more." That was all. No destiny, no prophecy, no grand declaration, just a man who had fallen into a galaxy that could not decide what to do with him. And for the first time in its history, the Star Wars galaxy had met something it could not predict. Not the Jedi, not the Sith, not the Force itself, but just someone who ended conflict without understanding why conflict needed meaning at all. And in that silence, the galaxy began to change. Not toward darkness, not toward light, but toward something entirely unwritten. Final conclusion, 200 words. Saitama's presence in the Star Wars galaxy did not create balance. It removed the need for it. Where Jedi saw destiny, he saw inconvenience. Where Sith saw power, he saw effort. Where the Force shaped meaning through conflict, he simply ended conflict before meaning could form. And yet nothing about him was malicious, nothing was planned, nothing was guided. That was what made him impossible to classify and impossible to ignore. Across the galaxy, factions would continue to argue, fight, and interpret his existence as weapon, omen, or threat. A Palpatine would seek to understand him. The Jedi would fear what he represented. Anakin would question what strength even meant. But none of them could change the central truth. Saitama did not belong to the Force, and therefore the Force no longer defined him. Somewhere in the silence after the war, a new question began to form across the stars, not from the Sith, not from the Jedi, but from reality itself. What happens when a galaxy built on balance meets something that no longer needs it? The answer had not yet been written, but the galaxy would never be the same again.